Chaim Volozhiner on the topic, but we'll talk. You probably don't even know there's a sefer Tshuvas of Reb Chaim Volozhiner. It's called Chut HaMeshulush. Actually, it was part of it's a thick book, which has Reb Chaim, his son-in-law, Rabbi Hillel Fried, and his grandson, Rabbi Yitzchak. He was the chashivste Einekor of Chaim Volozhin. He was a Shiva in Volozhin for a short period, and he died young. So there's Chiddush Rabbi Yitzchak. It's a big book. So they mitzarf to that the Tshuvas of Reb Chaim and Reb Hillel, his son-in-law, and you probably never heard these names, and Rabbi Yitzchak. It's called Chut HaMeshulush. A great read. I want you to know. So there's a tshuva there on a tshuva Reb Kivegin, which is it's actually all about Yakir. So it's quite interesting. I sent it to you. You have copies of it on your phones. Now you probably didn't recognize what it was. I sent it to you a while ago. If you'll see the word Chut HaMeshulush, you'll understand that's Reb Chaim Volozhin, dealing with the question of Ein Chayzev Magid in Yakir and Amasla B'Yakir. That's how is Yakir a terrorist, Edis not terrorist. It's really Reb Chaim Volozhin discusses. He does a very nice job. Okay, so let's go here. What did we learn so far? We've learned Aleph from the Rashbam. We learned that the getter of Yakir is Al Korah. It's an M1 is for Al Korah, nothing more. That's how it started. Now the getter that's number one. Now the question is this like Eid Echad or is it less or something else? We pointed out by the bare fact that Yakir is an M1, even if he doesn't say it in Bezin, even if he doesn't say it in order to be made, which is take for, since he calls him that, this makes him into Muktzah. For example, we have the story with what he mentions to the people in the Meches. For goodness sakes, he's talking to some guy. And that's a din of Yakir, unless you can explain why he changed his words. And as we take for granted that the words of a father describing his son create a chazaka, create muksuk. That's clearly not a din of Naaman. It's not even thinking of testifying here. It's just a nonchalant conversation. It's less than anything. Even again, we saw also Rashbam calls it Haidah and calls it Taina. We saw that in Rashbam Kuf Chav Zayin Amid Beis. Haidah, Taina. Well, what was the idea of Haidah? We pointed out Haidah by Dinei Mamis is not. It's a subjective belief, but it's machzik, an objective chayv. That's why we couldn't care. We don't know what happened or didn't happen. We couldn't care less. And Dinei Mamis, we have a Haidah talking about alone on Sunday, and then Eid Echad on alone on Monday, and then mitzdarif. Because we're not talking about verifying the story. We want to know the chiyuv, and we really don't care if the accumulation of two stories. That's the idea. But your marzik and Eidah is marzik the din, the halacha, not marzik the metzius. You create an objective. It's metzius of choiv, but you're not creating an objective metzius of sipur dvarim ba'am of how it happened. Guy says, I took a loan on Tuesday. The idea you took a loan, didn't take a loan until this for us is irrelevant. What's to get to us? You're mighty that you're chayiv. That's why we say that in Eid Echad, dealing with a loan on Tuesday and Haidah about the story on Monday, they get together as a group and the two Eidim that there's a chayv. And that's what we saw in the Rashba and Ksubas Chafaf. It's called Kushta Ka'amra. They verify a truth. Which truth? Not the truth of a story, but the truth of a chayv. You owe guy money. Simple as that. That's all we care about. So here the question on the table is that is one that's what Haidah is. Taina is definitely, when we talk about Taina, talking a subjective claim, okay, which usually is not a source for belief of anything. A Taina is nothing more than a subjective claim, and that it has to be verified. And the reason we give weight to claims is because of the chazakas which support it. We learned that in the past at length with Chasabatim. A taina is at the best is nothing more. The value of a taina is the value of chazakas which stand behind it. Whatever different chazakas which support it are expressed in that taina. We discussed this at length when we discussed the ideas of Malu the Shaka and Migu. You must recall that. Okay, so what's this over here? Calling it a taina, and then calling it a calling it a taina, calling it a Haidah, and then saying the words Kivan Shehigit Shuvan Echayzer Umayit. So he pointed out two things. We point out, first and most, I mentioned the Tshuva Saran that the Shev Shmeitzer brings. I'm dying to know if anybody bothered to look it up. Probably not. Shmeitzer Vav Perik, what is it? Perik, Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, and Yud Daled. Anybody look it up? Raise your hand. You're good people. That I am impressed. Thank you. Isn't it beautiful? Isn't it cool? It's like, wow. You have a time in it? Okay. You have a big time in it because that's like a revolutionary run. Okay, so the Ram basically holds that any edus which comes to court, even edus of Yisurim, which doesn't need it doesn't need a terrorist edus at all. We know that echad in Yisurim is not even a get of a regular terrorist edus. Echad in Mammon is called edus. And one aid is enough for shvua. Two aidim are enough for mama. But aid echad beisurim is not even a real getter of terrorist aidis. I recorded this multiple times. A famous taz in the beginning of Tyrivus, that the halacha is if there's a Tyrivus, something fell, milk fell into the meat, whatever, a mixture over there of isra and eter. And if you're not sure whether the shishim or not to be mevatel the tam, so what's the halacha? We ask this chef. We ask a professional chef and we say, hey, by taste it, do you feel any milk in there? And he doesn't know you're asking it for halachic purposes, and he's a non-Jew, obviously. Excuse me, right? A Jewish chef won't help too much. Okay, a non-Jewish chef, and we say, hey, Christopher, does that taste milky? Should we add more milk or something like that? And he says, no, there's just enough. Okay, basic. So now I know there's tam chalav, and now he's nema. Now the guy's a guy. How's he nema? The din is an akum is nema, but mesiach lefitume. If he doesn't know you need it for the purpose of a heter, just to verify a fact, and he's a ben noyach, he's nema. Why? So the Taz in the very beginning of Teravis, he says because there's no din edis there. There's a loch of gilul mil, so you got to find out what. You have to find out there's not din of edis in this, because eid echad b'yisurim is not din of edis. The edis is lo yakum eid echad b'ish. There's no edis. There's no such thing. By isurim, since it's not, I think one discusses gemara hadover. You're not paskening a shaila. You're telling me what a fact is, which at the moment is not a halachic question. For that, he's not a din dover. We had a similar thing to that of a riff in Yavamis. Does anybody remember, like the beginning of Gittin? Remember that sugya ishtamudana? Okay, where we had this, someone said some kind of a chabura on that about Yakir recently. Who was that? I forget. He equated Ishtamadana to Yakir. I forget who it is. Sweet boy, very sweet. I don't know who it was. It was pleasant to see that someone taught him that riff. Anyway, so that you probably all don't go to all the chaburas. I do. I want to see who's chayiv chavala and who's not. Right? Chabur tachas chabur, ayin tachas ayin. Okay, I'm listing them so far. So far, I have them. Yeah, you're good. You're on the top, Hodges. You did well. Right. Right. Okay, you guys are missing your chaburs. Would you believe it? Learn another taisvis. It'll be much healthier. On me. Right, but it's a nice experience. It's a beautiful thing, and if people actually listen, so they're going to learn something, which is very important. I mean, anybody listens and gets something out of it, it's an enormous Torah. You know what you're doing. It's unbelievable. God, what that is. Anyway, but I just enjoy seeing young boys like you can say things so fast, and I have to spit blood until I come out with something. You know what I mean? You guys, it rolls after a week or two. God's fine. I'm very impressed. You know, Mekenzog, a bissel salt, a bissel of pepper, and why not a little whipped cream? And I'm saying, wow, you know, how I have to say this and really believe it. I have to struggle. And these are all a bunch of iluyim. I was once called a Balkishun. You know, I'm telling you was. Anyway, that's a chaysh that you're either iluyim or you're like little kids in a reactor. You know, hey, it's green, it's yellow, oh, it's blue, yo. It's like the Simon Says game. You know, you press the different things and you get colors. And, boo! And then one day it blows up in your face. Right, but it's okay. It's very good. Anyway. It's interesting. Okay. Right. I tell you, it all depends on Tam Bosser or Tam Rashba. It all goes back to that Lashon HaGemara Menachos. The Unterste Shura, everything I've been told you the whole year goes back to that Gemara Menachos. That's all. That's what it goes back. You weren't here, David. You missed the Gemara Menachos. That's all. That's all. Everything else is it's like Hillel and the Ger. This is Kalatera Kula. V'idach Zil Gemara. I'm not joking when I say it. Everything I said, for everything I always say, this is Kalatera Kula. V'idach Zil Gemara. Now you understand. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going into a tangent. Discusses the idea, but in Ksavim, without going into where, that when they wanted basar, Riyachilenu basar, what they wanted is to have the libam should be. They wanted the kiyam v'nesati lehem siroisi mehem leiva even v'nesati lehem leiv basar. That's what they wanted. Woo! That's cool. Right there, not today, not now, probably not for another 10 years, but just want you to know you have to know how to read Chumash at different levels, Pshat, Rambam, Jewish, whatever it be, but it's a really cool, the Bible is so nice. Anyway, back to the board. About Taiva, I tell you, I want to talk, but they can't. This is what they did to me on Shabbos in the morning. I had to stop in the middle because you guys had to eat that. Hey, the show wasn't bad. Did you like fish for it? Because I saw you guys, the gruel you were eating Friday night, it looked like something from Alabama. And there was mamish pieces of thing in there. You did a fishing job?
Not really.
Okay, I thought maybe I was chayshish for Megas. I didn't know that maybe because how this happened here? Because I was looking what you guys were eating there. That wasn't clear which bracha you made on it. It wasn't nicker. Yeah, nicker. You need glasses, and here it was nicker. What can I tell you? There wouldn't be a din taraybis. It wouldn't even be yavush balach because it's nicker. There was no din taraybis. Shulchan didn't work there. Okay. Anyway, just want you to know. Okay, going back to here. I'm sorry. I got to get into a mood. Okay, what's haltech? Yeah. What am I doing? What? Yeah. So what's the idea? So an Eid Echad we know is what's an Eid Echad do. So there's an Eid Echad which is Neman on which is a Torah Eidus, but there's an Eid Echad which isn't even Eidus. And since it's not Eidus, therefore the Messiah Lefi Tuma is believed by a goy. Why? Because he probably tells the truth. He's a mumcha. He has no his gaiva wants to make sure that people will trust him. So he'll be probably telling the truth. You can't use this for that if you need proper Eidus. Just like a migul doesn't help for Eidim. Remember? Taisvis? Okay, either in Basar and Ksubas. Okay, doesn't migul doesn't for Eidim. Eidim need a migul, they in a bad place. Okay, they know good. Okay, we know that. We learned that. And yet over here it works because we figure your guy wants to make sure that you know what you're talking about, so we should trust you. How does it work? So the God, it's not Eidus. It's just an emanus. Like Ishtamadana, we all of a sudden it's not a Davar Shabbat. Tell me that John Doe is the brother because not in the at the moment. Oh, afterwards he dies. Let me tell you about it. It's a chalitza. If you remember that riff. Okay, so here it goes even further. Just telling me about whether there's milk, whether the porridge is milky or not. He's not even looking into the realm of Yisurim or anything like that. That's just a Gilim Milsa Alma. Okay, then Yafal became the Ran tells us that if it goes to Bezdin, there's a din of Kivashig and Shuvah Nechazer Magid. God help me. Now, obviously, this doesn't work with Shittas Rashi and Ksubas Yud Ches Amid Bet. It says, "What's the mark of Kivashig and Shuvah Nechazer Magid?" He says, "Because the pasuk is Im Lo Yagid Chada Yagoda Amar Rachmana." Im Lo Yagid, he's got one bullet into his barrel. Okay, he can only shoot once. One Agoda. He doesn't have more Agodas. The second Agoda is not Eidus. Now he's telling me stories. Stories versus Eidus is meaningless. That's the pshat. Chada Agoda Rachman Yud Ches Amid Beis in Rashi. Well, if that's the case, it's only on the Eid, which has a din of Imla Yagid V'Nasa Avoina that will not fit by Yisurim. The din of Imla Yagid is only by Eidus Mammon. If you really want to know with a Tviyah, according to Rambam. If he's Taveh Eidus Mammon, he doesn't, and that's the halacha. But if over here, this is just 80 certain Baalma, was a patch for a good Shabbos. That's not the story. So with the Taz. So obviously he doesn't learn that way. How does he learn to get it in Layagid and Nasavoinite? The idea of Ein Kiva Shegid Shuvna Chayzer Magid. He understands it based on the Svara which the Ritva brings there, and the Shittim Kwetzes also brings it in Ksubs Yud Chesam and Beis. That for goodness sake, the halacha cannot depend on information which can constantly be retracted. The halacha needs something stable. You can't paskin the shukha. A dayan is not going to a bezdin will not do a ma'aser bezdin, which will be retracted the second later because I'm sorry, I forgot, I meant something else. There's no such thing. If you want a yakum davar, you want things to be substantiated. It has to be some kind of a kvius. You can, otherwise forget it. Everything is on water. You know what I mean? Everything is rolling. It depends on the wave. It's meaningless. And nothing can be. You can't be say. You can't be mekayim a davar. How does the pasuk describe what Bezin does with edus? You're mekayim a davar. You're substantiating a reality. You can't call a reality substantiated if it can be retracted 5 minutes later. That would be the steer to the musik of yakum davar. So the cloud is every ma'aser bezdin cannot paskin unless it has to be something which is stable, which is a swerg. It also fits with the pasuk of yakum davar. Now, if that's the case, it's lav dafke something which is totally in Torah's edus. It's a totally in the basis of information which bezdin will paskin from. So it really depends on psak bezdin. If the edus came to the bezdin and the bezdin has the paskin, it's different than a regular morada asra. Once it's a psak bezdin, it's a ma'aser bezdin. It has different halachas. Okay, once it's a psak of bezdin, if that's the case, bezdin cannot paskin as a bezdin unless there's, so to speak, unless there's something stable there. That's what the Ran says. I couldn't care less if it's isurim or not isurim or mammon, where it's part of al pishtaim made him yakum davar or not. Now that you're coming to bezdin, we have to be mekayim that. Okay, so ein nachaname echad is enough, but because you don't need two for that. Afal pikein, the din is it has to be something stable. That's the spur behind. Now that's an interesting spur. This would make sense if we basically say that that the idea of if we parallel that to Yakir, but we're going to say that Yakir is a manas like an Eidechad or something like it. Elamai, you don't. The halach is keeping shigashud nechazamag if it comes to Bezdin, and the classical Yakir is a case where you go to Bezdin because where's Yerusha? It's called Chukas Mishpat. It's supposed to go to Bezdin. Very fine and beautiful, but it's not true. Because Yakir works even if someone else comes to Bezdin and tells that you did that in the customs office. Right? You got stuck over there in Ben Gurion. They called you in, hey, but you got in your suitcase. Okay. And there you fly, you blurted something out and someone heard you and said, that's Ganuk. Oh, my little kid, you know what I mean? Gamano, you just mock him as your son. Goodbye. So Koch, that's not the Agdora. Okay, it's not a word like this. Even without Bezin, there's a din of Kiv Shigid Shudu Chayzer Magid as we see from the Rashbam. That if he said the Chatchila Avdi and then he said afterwards Bni, you have to have an explanation of why. And if the explanation works and there's an Amasla, then the din is it's okay as long as it's not Makrish, because if Makrish, the din would be Kiv Shigid Shudu Chayzer Magid. That's what the Rashbam writes in Kuf Chav Zayin Amud Beis. No, that won't even work with the Ran. This hasn't come to court. Adrabi, it's on the basis of what happened outside of court. Bezdin may want to pass him, but it's not a din in the court at all. And the Ran only said this for if the edus is in court. So you got to come to a conclusion that it means something else. Okay, now we parallel that we brought another source for this. And this was the Ramban in the beginning of the third parak of Kedushin in the Milchamas Hashem, where the Ran said that anything which is believed in the Torah, anything the Torah takes and believes, the din is once you said it, we can't retract. He doesn't mention Bezdin. Look at the Lashon of the Ran here. I'll read it to you. It's the Ramban in Kiddushin. Here, I have it here. Oh. He is talking in the case the guy says, who is this? Who is the father of this child? Oh, it was John Doe and he's a Kohen, etc. But we don't know to say this is in court. Okay, let's put this mildly. So he says the Lashon of the Milchamas is minute. Yeah, page Ayin Hey is V'Hada. Lo matzina b'Talmud nemon v'yachol lachzor bo elokol shenemon kiven sheigid shuvanechayzer amagid. So once again, he uses the lotion of nemon. The fact of the matter is, by Yaakov, we also use the lotion of nemon. Question: what does the word nemon mean? Nemon does not have to mean court. A definite is nemon b'yisur, and that actually is nothing more than a gilam mil sibiyama. It means your words are a basis of which the system can pass in halacha with. That's what it means. When we talk about Eid Echad is Neman for X and not for Y. Is he less believed or more believed? Are we going to say that your 1/8 is less believed than 2? Is that the idea? There is a chinuch like that, which we once had a big argument with going back when I learned Kitten. We're not doing this over here now. Okay, I don't know if you remember this, maybe if you do. Okay, but honestly, you think a day before your bar mitzvah you were less credible than the day after? Were you? You think so? I'm impressed if you think so, because I don't think so. I think I was actually more credible when I was younger. I was more of a tamim, and whatever I saw, I said, yeah, got myself in trouble. Don't say so much. After I learned to keep my mouth shut. Okay, I don't know why. I think I was more credible after my bar mitzvah than before my bar mitzvah. This is exeris hakasa of a decision of a certain concept of exeris hakasa. The credibility of a person from 13 and on has the weight necessary for passing a shaila. And beforehand, we believe you, but the believing is not enough. What kind of legal weight does it have? And it's not enough legal weight to pass a shaila with. That's all it is. I want to discuss that the Goslin is a psul na'amanis, and how did we explain that? I told you once a raya heard from Chaim Shmulevitz from Taisus and Zvachim. It's not we think he's a liar. His na'amanis is puzzle. The Gemara Taisus there discussed that we should learn a psul shchita by a Goslin because he's. I'm not going to the raya at the moment. At the time I bought it for you. It's one of those beautiful things I remember as a child. What it means to say your credibility does not have enough legal weight. Why do I say that for certain topics in Eid Echad is enough, for certain topics that 2 Eidim are enough? It's because it's very nice, but to do something which is mammon, you need a heavier amount of credibility, shall we say. Something which has more legal weight. And by the fact of the matter is you're believed within Eid Echad. By an Isha, you're believed within Eid Echad. God help me. Okay, according to many sheets, it's deraisa. Okay, but Hatran Ishishishva and Naguna, and when you learn the end of Yavamas, you'll learn that. No, yet there's certain halachas which you need Shnei Eidim. Well, at the best for you can say about Shnei Eidim, you say there's a certain external corroboration by the fact that two people say similar things, which is the for the chin. Doesn't mean you're more credible. There's external corroboration to your credibility. Now that's a chiddush for itself because we know that Migu doesn't work. And yet, 2 Eidim, a second 8 does work, which is quite very problematic in conceptual thinking. Either I have the credibility on my own, bravo. If I don't, if I can have external corroboration, well, if that's the case, why can't I have a migu? So an Eid Echad with a migu should be like 2 Eidim. And no one dreams of saying that. So let's understand. I agree there is external corroboration, but what does that mean to say? That doesn't say we believe you more. That means there's added weight to your credibility. That's what it is. Doesn't mean we believe you more. Because if we don't believe you enough, that won't help. Just like a trade with a migu doesn't help. Because I'm sorry. You have to believe because of yourself, not because of external factors. That's what Taisva says, okay? Okay, that's the getter of Eid. So then how come credit corroboration by someone else does help? So obviously, even the chinuch must be understood. It doesn't mean say we believe you because of corroboration. No, we believe you because of yourself. The external corroboration gives more weight to your belief. That we can do. That's a possibility, maybe. Weight enough for these kind of halachas. And obviously, external corroboration does not give more weight when it comes to a shaila of trey or trey. Okay? That's a never push, but we take for granted it's an extraneous factor. So it can't be giving you the inherent credibility necessary, because that has to be coming from yourself. That's the whole idea of edus. So what is it? It adds pressure to what you have. It glazes your cake. It's not the cake. It's the cherries. Cherries are nice. I want you to have to talk about time, right? So this, you have to understand, this is the agdor. Okay, if that's the case, so what do we say here? Any person which has a neman, the word neman simply means words you say which have enough weight that we can pass on a shaila with. That's what it means. Your neman, you have legal nemans. What does legal nemans mean? That means we can trust your words to pass on a shaila with. That's what this is. Okay, so he says a big aside. He says any place where there's a din of nemanas, he's further than the Chuvas Saran. The Chuvas Saran is talking in Bezdin. He said there's no such thing. If you're neman chutz lebezdin, there's also given shigit shuv nechayzer magid. There he's talking about a lady saying, "Who's the father of my child?" And so on and so forth. Something close to Yakir, but on the women's side. We're not also getting ksubas. Okay? So, same thing. She's believed for whatever reason it be, and she doesn't have a din of Yakir. Decided to get another halacha. This is the sugis at the end of the first break of ksubas, which, believe me, I would love to go into, but there's no way we're going to do that because I'll never walk out of there that year. Okay, sorry. I learned with experience, don't start things. Usually I'm good at this. I don't start what I can't finish. Sometimes I get in the middle. Whatever. So what does it mean? So now what's Yakir? So now we know it's Lav Daka, that Ramban. That's good. Now, so Neman will include Yakir. You're believed for something you can't retract. It's as simple as that. That's one way of saying the Yakir. That's if you understand the Yakir is a Ne'emanus, period. You're believed. But the problem is we seem to be seeing from the Rashbam more than that. It's not a Ne'emanus. It means to say you're only Ne'eman to be Machzik, not you're believed on something at all. You're only Ne'eman to be Machzik. If you'd be a proper Ne'emanus, if we have a suffix, what you mean, we'd have Svekis. And the Rashbam said there's not even a suffix. So the most you are, your words are enough. We have the Lashonis of Yakir in the Torah, in the Gemara, of Ne'emanus. Afal Pikain, it doesn't mean belief, I believe you and therefore I'm Machzik. No, you're only believed for being Machzik. That's the Afkamina. That's all you can do. And if what you're saying, which we believe you, that can't make you Machzik because you're saying Sveikash, you didn't say anything. Once you're saying that, it's not based on I believe you and then you're Machzik, rather your words are only enough to create a chazaka, so I can understand. It's lav dafka talui. It's lav dafka talui in the in Basner or anything like it. Whatever you say makes it Machzik. Now it begins to clear. So you know what this really is? Yakir is you react a certain way toward your child and express it. That creates a chazak. Just like a girl lives with somebody for 30 days, just as a koil ba'alma creates a chazak of a son, etc. As Rashman points out in Kuf Chav Zayin of the bottom of Amid Aleph. That's what a dad does. According to that, it's not ne'emanus to be machzik. It's ne'emanus for being machzik. And it's not you're believed, and that belief is enough for us to be machzik. That I can understand would demand a certain getter of kavanah lahoid, etc. But the nonchalant say, hey, tell John, get me his saliva because he's the firstborn. Excuse me. There's no question there. You can say, didn't we hear you say pass the ham? I didn't say it's ham. You said nonchalantly pass the ham. That doesn't do well. Okay? That's a bisa b'kutcha. Okay? If you said this is ham, okay, that's something else. Okay, but so you said you bring me my firstborn. That means nothing. The Torah said I don't need that. It's not edus. It's not ne'emanus. The word ne'emanus must be understood as your words have enough weight, halachic weight, for us to base a shaktin of muchzik on it. That's the agdor of this. This goes back to the language of muchzikani, shub, chor, etc. This is summary of what we discussed. L'maisa, Reb Kveger and Reb Chaim don't you actually use this at all. They do whatever they do. It's worth seeing. I sent it to you. It's Kvegus and Kufyud. Rav Chaim does send us to an important Gemara, which has to be seen. And that's it's a Gemara in Yevamos. There's another person which is believed about his child, and that's a father is believed about his daughter. Okay? The father is believed about his daughter. Okay, what do we know that? That's a Gemara that says the person, Mishnah Kedushin. Man is believed to say is beaten the Sati Leisha Zeh. Kedushin. Mishnah says, Daf Samach Gimel Amid Beis. Mishnah says, Kidashti is biti. Ve'eni yodea lemi kidashtia. I don't know who. I remember she was a ketana. Some guy caught me in shul, says, I want to marry your daughter. Says, sure, no problem. Pruta, please. And all of a sudden, didn't remember, was it Yankel or Beryl? You know, this is the way it was once upon a time. That's the chais. He doesn't remember who it is. What's the din? So this mandomer says Nema. We pass in that halacha. What happened to the Shaimayers in Betalis? Zoyma Nikidashtia, Vazema Nikidashtia, they're all fighting over a ketana. Shneim Neistim get. Vim Ratzu Echad Neistim get, Vechad Kainis. That's the halacha. Now there's a machlekes in Gemara. Let's look at this carefully. Iboilu, Mal Liskol Al Yodai. What happens if the father says Kidashti is BT, and there's no Edi Kedushin? He says, I did the Kedushin, means I did it with Ne'edim, right? You can't do it on your own, that's meaningless. I was Mekad with Ne'edim, and he's believed. He's believed. Do we also, and therefore, what's the halacha? Since he's believed, so the guy can now marry her. Kaines, that's what he says. The guy says that Kidashti is BT, it's BT Nasati Lisha, he can live with her, and there's no problems. Okay, what's the halacha if she was Mazana? If she called an Arusa or Nasua, whatever it is, this is talking about Erison, but Mikra. But Kidashti is beaten Asati, is talking about Erison. Is she a now Marasa and she gets skiller or not? Is he machzik her? So the Gemara says, Ma'al Liskul al Yodai. So the Gemara, it's a machlekes Amarayim. Rav Omar ain't cycling. Rav Asi Omar cycling. Rav Omer ain't cycling. Ki hemne rachmana la'av, the ne'emanis of the father on the daughter li'isura. It's only for making iser v'heter. L'ktola lo hemne zak Rashi HaKadosh ma'u liskal al yodai shel la'av kleimer al pivim Omer kidashti es biti ve'edi kedushin ein boin lefanenu v'zinsa ma'u lachzika al piv. Kedin Myra Murasa Vilasaikla. And we mazik her as a Naira Murasa, and therefore, if she was Milana, she gets skila. And what does Rav say? No, Ki Hemne Rachman al. When did God, the Torah, believe the father? Where from? So he brings the pasuk as Biti Nasati Laisha Zeh. This is a drasha in the Gemara and Daf Samach Dal Damid Al. A memory to Rav Huna. It says it's Biti Nasati. So okay, you just made her usher, and we now know. I just makash my daughter. You're believed. And then it says, Laisha Zeh. All of a sudden, you're believed to say it to him. So there's two things happen. When you say the beat in the Sati without saying Laisha Zeh, she's usher on everybody. And then when you said Laisha Zeh, it means that you made her mutter on this guy. He's not married to someone else. She's married to you. Okay, so that's what the Gemara says. Beat in the Sati, Laisha Zeh. You want to see it in Samach Dal Amid Aleph, the last two lines before the Mishnah at the bottom. It said the Amar of Huna Marav Minayin La'av Shenemen Lesser is Bita Minat Torah. Sheneemar is Biti Nasati. You see the last two lines before the Mishnah at the bottom. Samadal Damid Aleph. Amar of Huna Marav Minayin La'av Shenemen Lesser is Bita Minat Torah. Shenemen Bita Nasati La'ish Hazeh La'ish Asra Hazeh Hitira. So it says Bita Nasati La'ish. Don't know who. Stop there. She's Asra on the world because everyone you don't know maybe she's Ish. When he said Hazeh, he said, no, I mean this one specifically. This is the Allah. This is the makkah of this whole din. So we say, what's the Allah? So he says, you only nemut to say, she's Asr and she's Ish, and she's mutter to this one. That's what he says. So it's only the surah. We don't have exercise for more than that. What does Rav Ashi say? Cycling. Why? The kula milsim lerachman alav. What's in the kudas hamachlokus? Go a little further. Amar Rav Ashi umaydina, but I am minded to you. That's only when he says, "It's biti nasati." There's a pasuk that believe. Umaydina, but I am minded, but a maris niskadash. If she says it on her own, now here you have no pasuk. And he says, I'm moided to you, which is very interesting language of Gemara. It doesn't seem to be even a third cousin 4 times removed. What's it got to do with this? If she, not the father, which has no manis minat Torah, but actually something when she comes and does it on her own, why is she believed? Because there's a very simple halacha, shavia anafshe, chaticha de isura. What does that mean? Let me explain it before people, because people make terrible mistakes. There's 2 halachas. One person says, for that, you don't need the din of shavia nafshech tichadisur. If you saw a chicken which was slaughtered, the wrong side, so you don't have to say, I'm believed to say that it's treif, and that's why I can't eat it. You don't need to believe anything. You saw, it's treif. If you know it's kosher, if you know enough to know, you don't need a hechsher from anybody. You're not believed for yourself as an aid. Don't need aidis. You saw it's kosher. All dinim of aidis apply only to someone which didn't experience it, rather someone which is from the outside, which has to relate to other people. But for yourself, your knowledge is what governs you. If you know 100% that certain thing is treif, yet halacha has no aidus at the moment. Because of that, the din is going to be, they're going to do some, face fuss, play games with chazakas, etc. And it's going to be mutter for the world. You cannot eat it. It's as simple as that. It's treif. I mean, if you have eyes, if you have something behind the eyes, if you know to ascertain the situation and some halachic ramifications, yeah. No denadis. For yourself, there's no denadis. What you know is what you live with. Very important thing to remember that God gives us autonomy. Okay? It's what you know is what you live with. Remember that. You'll take it somewhere one day. I do. Okay, that's number 1. That's what you live with. That's number 1. Now, the halacha is, so what's the Shavuot Tichad Yisur? The special, you made it upon yourself, a Tichad Yisur, which obviously is not a netter. We all know that. That's a waste of time. Famous tshuva of Ned Yehuda that he writes to Marie Bacher. He says, listen, they say you're a Talmud Chacham. How can you even think of saying such narishkeit? That's what he writes. He says, you're a Talmud Chacham. You're a big Talmud Chacham. How can you dream such shtussim? It's unbelievable tshuva. And then he throws like, who knows how many rides. He says, you're mad. Like, please do not disturb me. This is one of those, because you're going to get these typical Hakira things. Is it A or is it B? Yeah. I love you all. Okay. Anyway, so anybody who has 2 brains, 1 brain between his 2 ears, knows that that's not even a tzad. What is the getter of Shavuot Shtich L'Yisur? Once again, it's basically you believed on yourself. What's the chiddush of Shavuot Shtich L'Yisur? That once you've told that to us, we now enforce upon you to live by your knowledge. The din of kfiyah. The whole chiddush of Shavuot Shtich L'Yisur is only one chiddush. The fact that you live on your knowledge, I don't need a din of Shavuot Shtich L'Yisur. I live by my eyes. But why would the court intervene or wouldn't it intervene? Normally, the court only intervenes with objective data. Does court intervene for the subjective person who lives by his subjective perception of reality? Or can court only intervene when they have an objective legal reality through 2 witnesses? The din of Shavuot, this undermines all these. I'm doing you a favor. You don't even know what the favor I'm doing. I'm not sure you think I'm laughing. You're going to go back and hear all this stuff. You're going to eat it up with custard. Okay? So, chaperein as fast as much as you can now. Okay? All of you. Right. Okay. What is Shavuot? The chiddush Shavuot is only one thing. The chiddush is if you made it usher upon yourself, we will intervene. We will make sure you live that way. Now, we will intervene, but not enough to punish you. It gets interesting. The whole chiddush of Shavar Nafsheh, we will force you to live by what your perceptions, but we will not punish you. You have what that is, because that's what the Rav Ashi says. And I admit to you, Rav, but a Meris Niskadash, when she says I was Miskadish. Which what's the din? Shavia nefshich tichadisur. She's believed that she's mekudeshes, and we enforce upon her not to do what? Not to be mizana with anybody else. But we're not going to give punishment. Now, what's in the kudus? Let's understand the why and what's got to do with Medina. That's the question on the table. What's this got to do with what Rav said? Was Rav talking about the din of Shavia nefshich tichadisur? Rav was talking about that the father is believed in a pasuk to say about a daughter. Might as saying, I believe you also that the water is leaking. I don't know. Well, what's it got to do with the previous statement? There's an argument. God gave credibility or whatever legal weight to the statement of a father, which describes the marital situation of his daughter. Period. And here there's the machlokes. Is it just for Isurim? In other words, we do intervene for Isurim, but we do not intervene for punishment, which is what Rav says. And Rav says, no, we go all the way. He says, but I do admit to you, when it's not that, but it's a case of Shavar Nefsheh Tichadisura, there I admit to you that although we intervene to make sure you don't do the Avera, but we will not punish you. Please, obviously, there's a relationship between the two. When you say, but I admit, equals a certain common denominator, and you're supposed to somehow tell me what the common denominator was, which would allow you to say that maybe the ruling should be the same. And now he's pointing out, no, there's a difference. And then you have to tell me what the difference is. It's a nice Gemara. Perfect for a final. Well, let's start out of the base. We understand that Shavar Nefsheh Tichadisur means to say it's not that it's objective, it's subjective data, which is enough for us to intervene for your subjective world. When it comes to punishments, we need objective data. Now, when it comes to his beating aside the Ishazeh, he says, I would have thought that it is parallel to Shavar Nefsheh Tichadisur. And there I do say that once we accept it even for the punishments. And therefore I would have thought that Shavar Nafsheh is the same thing. And Kamashma, no, it is different. What you already done is said that it beatin asati leish hazeh is not a classical edus, to say the least. It's not classical edus to say the least. It's not that at all. It is some kind of information which is really not objective data, but it is. Yet the information or the statement said creates a halachic reality to she's hugzak. Now he believes once it's hugzak for everything. Because what you're being machzik is not that she is a married girl, that you did the act of making kedushin. What your machzik is not the daughter, you're being machzik, you're ma'aseh kedushin. I received kedushin for John, for Harriet. Nafkamina, she's an eshazish. Granted. Well, it says once you verify you're a machzik that you received a tabas from John for Harriet, so there's once that uvda was muhzak, there's no difference between that she's usher and that she gets punished. Because once we know that the tabas was given from John for Harriet, well, she's an eshazish and gets punished. It's no different what the Rambam Paskins in Hilchos Sanhedrin Perek Tes Zayin, that if an aide comes and says this is chaylev, and in the court, and it's muhzik as chaylev, if someone afterwards eats it, he gets punished. The lush of the Rambam in Hilchos Sanhedrin is, let me read it. Right, Perek Tes Zayin Halacha Vav. Einay tzorich shnei edim lemalkos Ella b'shas maaseh. Where they have to testify when they saw you eat it, that we need to eat it. Aval ha'isur atzmo, to verify the nature of the isur, whether it's chaylev, whether it's masav v'cholav, whether it's klayim, whether it's orla. Be'ed echad yukzak. That's muzak with an eid echad. Ketzad, for an example. Amar eid echad, chaylev klayas shuzeh. This is chaylev klayas, which is asur. Klaya kerem hey, peirus elu, asur. Grusha oizaina he ishazu. It's also an eid echad is enough. Derech hagav. Very important to remember. The ben grusha needs two eidim. Remember what I just told you. Ben grusha needs two eidim. The grusha itself, one. Ben grusha is medrash halacha in dvarim. Pashas kiseitze. Lahalei shel harid min hakahuna. Remember. Okay, there is a din of davar. Ben grusha is a psul kahuna. That's something else. The psul of zaina or grusha, that's not that is something which eid echad is enough. A very important thing to remember. The reason, and his yichus for kahuna is two. The mother being the reason of his problem, that's one is enough. Just remember that. Very important thing to remember. So the halacha is. Grusha ozaina he ishazu. So the halacha is all this is eid echad. Then im ochal o boal beedim achash yehusa areza loika afal pisha ikra isa bebeid echad. Amed dvarim amurim shalohu chasha eid beis shekava isa. If there was no hakasha on the aid when he came and said testimony about this issur. Avlim Omar Zeh Ene Chalev Zeh Ene Grusha V'Ochal Oba Achash Eikrish and Elika Sheikva Isish Ne'edim. If there's a one chad keneged chad is meaningless, so now you need taka too. It's another halacha which not negate you. At the end of the day, Itzer Be'atz Atzmai Eid Echad Huvzak. Perik Design Sanhedrin Halacha Zayin. Halacha Vav. Perik Design Sanhedrin Halacha Vav. Yet here we have something interesting. So what does Ravasi say? Ravasi says that l'chayre it's the same thing. So I'm like an Eid Echad and I'm Machziker. And what? And Bezin now intervenes in Paskins. I would have thought if that's what it means. So what's the continuous? But don't think the same thing applies. But Shavi and Nafshi. Why not? But it doesn't apply. But Shavi and Nafshi Yisur. We would have thought just like an echad is machzik, you should be machzik. You're machzik, subjective being machzik, very nice, but it doesn't work. That's what he's pointing out. Let's try to understand the difference. In no place do I know, what do I know? I know an Eid Echad. That works. Okay, let's go back to here. There's Bitin Asati. What's he saying? This if Bitin Asati is like an Eid Echad, what's it got to do with Shavan Nafshidika Yisur? So what is it? So if Bitin Asati would be like Eid Echad, then for goodness sakes, I really am asking a serious question. So what's it got to do with Shavan Nafshidika Yisur? That's not an Eid Echad, that's just subjective. An Eid Echad is objective data. You got to come to a conclusion as Bitin Asati is also not objective data. It's not Ne'emanus like to aid him. It's if he says it, we're machzik him. And now she's machzik upon what he said. So what do we see? That in Ne'emanus, if a person asks for Kedushin, we are now machzik for everything. Rav doesn't agree. Rav says, I'm only Ne'emanus for Kedushin. We're not machzik it for Yisurim, for Einish. Rav Asi seems to be saying, if we're machzik for Yisurim, that allows it also to be machzik for Einshin. So what's this question? Well, why shouldn't we say the same thing by Shavi and Afshiti for the Yisurim? Just like we're machzik it for you, subjective hachzaka, for Yisurim, and we intervene, so we should be machzik for subjective misa. And the answer is there is no subjective misa. There is no subjective einshin. For einshin, I need objective reality. What's the common denominator? It's very simple. If, according to Rav Asi, we don't think that a father is an aid, which is believed. A father is machzik. And the Chiddush is, what's he being mazik? He's not being mazik his daughter. He's being mazik the Metzias. What's the Metzias? It beating a statil ish as a. If he would come and say, my daughter's an Eishes Ish, he wouldn't be believed. How do you know? No, he's abiding on the Maisik Kedushin. He says, I fulfilled my Maisik Kedushin between my daughter and this person. I'm the Mekadesh. I'm the guy that does it. Okay, I do it. We know that. Kedushin. Anybody learn this? Even Gimel and Beis. Should know at least that. Okay, so l'chayra, even you guys did that. Okay, but yeah, I mean, that's another bullshit. Okay, what he says here that beating the Satalisha is not in emunus and memela were marzik. It's an emunus on the Metzias. What was it? That there was I did a ma'aseh with my daughter. Once that Metzias is muhzik, he doesn't understand the difference between them. Muhzik for Isurim and Husik for Einshir. It's the same thing because you weren't mazik the Isur, you weren't mazik the identity, you were mazik a Metzius. Masha'enken, when it comes to Shavi and Nashir Tichad Isura, there is no, you were not even mazik a Metzius. I don't know if you know this. Famous Reb Kiveger, it says a very big cloud. What happens if there's two Adam that say if a person comes to his Maida, he says, Lo lavisi. He claims, Lo lavisi. I did not take a loan. And then they bring two Adam to say, hey, brother dear, you took the loan. Is he believed to say, yeah, but I paid it? So we say, no. Once you said Lo lavisi, you obviously meant also you didn't pay it because you don't pay loans you didn't take. Kala Omer Lo lavisi. Kilo Omar loy parati dummy. So you're not believed to say parati. You can't retract. Loy lavisi is implicitly loy parati. You didn't take the loan. You didn't pay the loan. Okay. The same thing. What happens if a girl says loinis kadashti? Hypothetically, and then we found Edi Kedushin. Is she believed to say this garashti? So the cloud is something by Mammon we say kol loy. By Isurim, by Shavi and Nashir Tichad Isura, such a Kivege, when she says Loinis Garashti, doesn't mean Loinis Garashti. I sent that to you in a letter. Kivege, Chafal Ksubis. It says that by Shavi and Nashir Tichad Isura, we're not Machzik the Metzias, we're Machzik the Isur. We don't say this is what happened. I can't say that. It's subjective. I can only say, as far as you're concerned, this is their law, the laws which govern you now. You say you saw something. Okay. As much as you say you saw something, I'm going to enforce that reality. So I don't have to accept that what you saw is true. I know that I have to live with your subjective perception of reality. Granted, so what's muhzik, as far as Allah is concerned, is not your perception of reality, but the fruits of it. The fact that, well, if this happened, you're married. If this happened, you're not married, and so on and so forth. So the Allah is like this. Shavi and Nafshe Tichad Isura is not, it's muhzik, but the muhzik is not the fact. The muhzik is only the isser. So, okay, what is muhzik is only the isser, so Besdin is going to intervene on the Isra. But tell me, do we punish you because something is usher or because a certain thing happened? Now, all these Isra are the same. So why are the punishments different? The common name between all these Isra, they're usher. Let's take about all these Isra, Shechai v'Misa. We'll do that for a case. But there's this skila and this streif and this cherev and this chenek, ereg and chenek. Okay. They're all usher. That's the common denominator. What differentiates them? What happened? The metzius, the form of how it takes. When it comes to Shavi and Nafshi, we're not dealing with forms. What happened? I don't know. It's usher. That's the cloud. I'm being machzik the isser, not the tzura, not the history of it, not what happened. And in order to be manish Guf, we have to deal not with the fact that it's usher, we have to know what happened. I have to know this is Chalev. You are an Eishes Ish. I don't know that. I know there's an Isser Eishes Ish. Because you have a private perception of reality. And therefore, as far as you're concerned, she's usher as an Eishes Ish. Now we're going to make sure you live with her as if she's an HSH. It's not that we agree to your story, not that we verify your story, not that we say you believe, we trust you as far as your story is concerned. It's irrelevant to us. That's why Shavi and Nafshech Yisur, we will intervene. For what? To make sure you fulfill the Yisurim. We will not intervene when it comes to something else. This is what comes out of this Gemara. The Gemara basically, by saying is pointing out that there's a common denominator between the Bitin and Satali Shazeh and Shavi and Nafshech Yisur. And over here, we saw that you are believed according to Rav Asi, both to be punished and also Bezdin intervenes with the Einish. Yet in the Shavi and Nashar, we won't. What's the Shakla V'Tarya? The answer is because over here you're muchzik not on the Teitzah, but on the Maisa. As beating us at the Shazet. That's exactly what you're muchzik on the story. Well, if you're muchzik on the story, even though you're not an aid, if this is what happened, so all the ramifications fall into place. No question about it. But by Shavi Nafshech Yisur, it's never that way. We're only machzik the Isser, not the Metzius. In light of this, and remember, he's saying Umoidina, means this will shed light of how Rav Asi understood Rav. See, you have to learn how to read a piece of Gemara. First, what's the relationship in Rav Asi himself between as Bitin Asati and Shavi and Nafshe? Now take that back, because he's saying this in agreeing to Rav. What's he agreeing to Rav? Because Rav's thinking is similar to what I think is Shavi Nafshe Yisur. Rav's thinking is the Bitin Asati L'Ishazeh is not Mazik Samatzias, it's Mazik Asadin. Is that relevant? If it wouldn't be something which is negative, it's not relevant. You're not happy when the person says Medina means say we have a question argument. L'chayra, we should be arguing also here. No, here I agree with you. Why am I moided to you? I'm moided b'chlal. Moidina means I'm moided to you. Whether it's not written in this context. What's happening here? Two people have a conversation and we have an argument, and they say, no, I will agree to you in that case. That means to say that case is relevant. I think I'm assuming something which is quite simple. I actually think obvious, to say the least. Doesn't bring in something which is totally irrelevant to our conversation, which of course is true. What's it got to do with us? It has to be something that means to say, no, one would have thought this has to do with our argument. And I know here I'm going to agree with you that this is different than what our argument is. And there's a certain Gilui Mil, so man doesn't have to say things which are out of the book. I say, I also agree with you that Shabbos is on Saturday. We're talking about Yerushalayim Midas. Why are we talking about Shabbos is Saturday? Because it's not relevant. But here it is relevant. It means don't think that I'm arguing with you in this. No, in this I agree to you. That's the conversation here between two people. What's the lumdus? The lumdus is pashit. It's very simple. How is it possible to say, let's talk to the pshat and Rav. When we paskin and Rav, we paskin is beaten aside to the ishazet, means to say what? That you're neman for the isser and you're not neman to einish. What's the difference between that? And we paskin that la'alacha. And you can read it. Okay? Why is that we paskin when it comes to chaylev and Eid Echad comes and says this is chaylev, afterwards we're going to give the guy malchus. Yet the father comes and says, I married off my daughter to John and she's married later. We're not going to give her skila afterwards. What's the difference? And we paskin both things la'alacha. That's Rav. So obviously there's a qualitative difference. The Isra is muhzik, and you can be machzik, but obviously the word muhzik doesn't always have to be the same thing. What are we being machzik by his beaten asatli shazeh going to Rav versus the Isra is muhzik with a chaylev, is muhzik with an eid echad, the Geramam in Sanhedrin Peretazai. Say the same thing. Say the father came and said, I married this girl off. I got money from John on Sunday for her. If that's the case, if she fornicated a month later, she should get stoned. And he says, no, we don't. Ki hemne rachmana li'isura l'ktala loy hemne. And let's understand the words. The credibility that you have, that we can basically psak halacha on now when you're saying it, is only enough to say she's usher, not enough to say that the us issa that we're making is enough to generate a misa. We don't believe you now for what happens 2 months from now. is what we believe you now. Will it generate an Isser if she's Mizana? If she's Mizana. I'm believing you believe me. I took Kiddushin for my daughter. So if that's the case, practically, if she's Mizana in a year from now, she should be stoned. No. The belief that the legal weight that the father has is not enough to substantiate the Isser in a way which will also generate naturally a Chiyuv Einshin. Its parallel is Shavia Nafshi Ticha de Yisur. And that's exactly the Umudina here. Now, what is it? He also believes that when it comes to his beat in the Satil Ishazeh, I'm not going into the whys and what at the moment, just from the Mahalach of the Sugi, he believes that's a Hachzokas, not the Metzias, the Isser. Ki hemina le'isur le'ktala le'emina means that we didn't say that we know that John was Mekadosh Harriet. We know you say John is Mekadosh Harriet, and that's Machzik Terez and Ishazish. So what's she Machzik in? Nothing more for the Isra of Ishazish. We don't, remember, he's paralleling it to Shavi Nafshti Chadisur, because that's exactly what Rabasi did. What did Rabasi say? I agree to you in the case of Shavi Nafshi. Didn't I say, yeah, because that's the chayr. When he is drawing a parallel between Shavia Nafshe and his Bita Nasati, I differentiate, but I agree to you in the case of Shavia Nafshe. That's the stop, that's the chayr, the simple flow of the Gemara when it says, Moidina, when I'm moidin to you, that Shavia Nafshe, the din is the best, and not going to be mine. We have one question, and repeat again. It's clear in Rav, there's a difference between a father saying Bita Nasati Shazeh and an Echad saying this is Chaylev. No, an Erech says it's Chaylev, you are Nenesh. Why? Because it's not enough to say it's Usher. The Erech actually tells us this is Chaylev. He gives it an identity. If the Erech could only say it's Usher, that would not create an Einish. Because Einshim need a form, not just an Isser. Isser is shared with everything. For an Einish to come, it has to have a certain form of Isser. Is the Eidach believed just on the Isser, or is it believed also on the story, on the form of the Isser? The answer is by the fact that afterwards the Eidach will be punished. That means the Bezdin is mazik, not just the Isser, but the form of the Isser, equals the story. And if Rav tells us that father cannot do that for a daughter, equals the father's only mazik, the Isser, the shame, Eishis Ish, we can use a different nice yeshivish words. He does not give us the form. He doesn't give us the form. He's not neman on the Metzias. He's neman on the halacha. Now, where does Rav get this? This is, I think, a kasha. This has to be explained. Because this is obviously the Nekudas HaMachlekes of Rav and Rav Ashi. The question is, where does Rav get this from? The Svara Pshuta would seem to be saying like Rav Ashi. And we do paskin Rav. That's his, I think, is Shaila. I'm not going there now. But what's clear to me, I just learned one thing. The word hukzak sometimes means form and sometimes means isser. That seems to be quite simple. So now the question is going back to Yakir. What the Yakir means that the father can be machzik. What's he machzik? Is he machzik the story, you are my firstborn? Or is he machzik? This you are the most. Or no, I'm just moving. You have a din of chor, or if you a din of ben chor. Is he machzik? Just the same question that the machlekes of Rav and Rav Ashi by his beating the satin leisha zeh, which you know is a machlekes amiruim. Okay, now I asked the same question by Yakir. Once we understood that Yakir is a yediyah, is a mirror which is machzik, it's even less over there. It's an emunus to be machzik. It's even less. You didn't say it to anybody. You said it to John Doe in the customs office, okay? It's an amira which is machzik. Is it machzik certain halachas? Or is it machzik a story? Is it machzik an uvda? I can see a possibility that by dafke, by bebit in the sati, even more mistavid is machzik a uvda. Because the pasuk says it's beat in the sati la'isha zeh. Okay? Okay, you're telling about a story, and Afal PK and Rav says no, it only means, and therefore you're believed to say that she's married. You're not believed to tell the story, because if we believe the story, she would be punished. There wouldn't be anything worse than Eid Echad by Yisurim. So Rav obviously believes that Bita Nasati is a notch lower than Eid Echad by Chalif. Now I want to ask the same question by Yakir. What's it din by Yakir? Is Yakir, well, what's the halacha? What's the din by Yakir? Are you being makir the din, the halachic ramifications? Is that what it is? Since it's not really an emunah, it's just being mazik a din. To be mazik can sometimes be mazik a din and not a fact. Or is it mazik a fact? Well, it seems to be clear as day. The Gemara says in Daf Kuf Chav Zayin, it brings the Brisa, the Sanya. Yaki yakirenu la'acherim. So the Rashbam writes, Rabbi Yehuda Kamer Alei, implying that this is a statement of Yehuda. It says yakir twice there in the pasuk. And what do we need the added yakakora for? It's a Yitura, and we say, what's the pasuk? Let's read it inside. Okay, where's my pasuk? Ki is korban asnoi yakir los lepishnayim. No, it's even before. Lo yuchal levakir. Give me the whole pasuk. What's the whole pasuk there? The two psukim. Ki yelish shtei nashim achas avovav achas noah. Yolashei bonim avovav asnoah. What does it say afterwards? Lo yuchal. Right. Levakir es ben ahuva pnei bnei asnoah. Ki es chor ben asnoah yakir. Let's let Bishnayim. Weiter. Next. So it says only one time yakir. Okay. So it says obviously there's a drasha here, which at the moment I have to go to what the added drasha is. Yakir kroy yiserahu. Rashi writes down first kroy yiserahu. There's a Yitura there, and what is it? Yakirenu la'acher. It's not that you tell him for yourself, but rather yakirenu la'acherim. You acknowledge him for other people. That's the chayr, what it means. So the Rashbam Rabbi Yehuda Kamer Alei. Don't think the word yakirenu la'acherim is basically a caption. This is the halach of Yakir, and now there's a machlekes what the scope is. Rather, Rashbam explains Yakirenu la'acherim is specifically a svar of Rabbi Yehuda, implying that Rabbanan argue on that. He understands the Yakir, the added drash Yakir equals Yakirenu la'acherim. It is now known to others outside of your subjective relationship between you and your child. But now he is known as such to others. What does that mean to say? It's a nice way of saying it walks out of the subjective relation between you and your son. It now becomes an objective hukzak. And that's Yakirenu la'acherim. And it is that Rabbanan argue with. That's exactly what Rashbam writes. Rabbi Yehuda Kamer Alei. It's Rabbi Yehuda saying this. Rabbanan disagree. In light of this, what is the question? The question on the table now is, according to Rabbi Yehuda, it becomes objective data hukzak. Objective data hukzak cannot just be for Isurim. We only find that we don't find that's not true. That's in a certain relationship. If you got Kirenu Lachem, she is renowned for the public. It's a nice way of saying you're a Matzika Metzias. You take Chaylev. And therefore, since you're Matzika Metzias, that what? That he is your rachis oinoi? Because what does poor mean? I'm being makin, not this a din poor, that he is rachis oinoi. This is a fact that knows. Why would other people care whether I'm a poor or not? The Torah says that we want to know an emes. It's called Yakachem. It's now objective data. That's the word. Let me finish. It's objective. Muzik is objective data, not just that other people don't have to know your relationship with your child as far as poor is concerned. It's irrelevant to other people. But objective data, when I want to describe objective data, it means to say it's something walked out of the relationship between you and your son. I say, yeah, it's renowned. It's common knowledge. Equals. It means to say, this is the way we perceive reality. If it just lies within the relationship, subjective relationship between the father, which is the bequeather, and the child, which is the heir, this is totally subjective. And I say that what we're saying here, Yaka is not subjective. This subjective recognition creates objective muzik. And since it's such that it creates a sexual muzak, the next piece comes immediately. So therefore, Rav Yehuda continues, Ukeshem shene'eman adam lemer zeh b'ni b'chor, kach ne'eman lemar zeh ben gusha ben chalutza. Zok Rashbam. Mon adam lemar, he continues, v'afal pi shemachzikim acher b'b'chor. How does he know this? How does the Gemara know this? He knows it because the Gemara says. How does the Gemara know that? I read this price 1,000,000 times. We're saying the price of afapi that's with a chazaka, without a chazaka. The answer is very simple. Once you're telling me that you're creating objective data, so what's the possibility of mechadish? That you are the person which is mechazi. You're telling us the Metzias. You're the bira Metzias. Lashon the Ritva and Erevin was Iker Eidus Av B'chor Aidav. You know, in chazakas, there's different types of chazakas. There's chazakas that we deal with the core issue, called cheskes haguf, and chazakas which don't have tools of knowing the core issue, but we deal with how do people relate to things. Cheskes din. When these two chazakas clash, the one that deals with the core issue takes precedent. Cheskes haguf overwhelms all the chazakas. When the Torah says, "Ki im b'chor ben asnoi yakir los b'shnayim," that the Meir says, "You are the person which is makir." That is the mock of that Korah. All other chazakas fall away in place of that, because this is what you are telling us. Not you're telling us what happened. Everything else is saying, "Well, since we know people call them that way, that's probably what happened." And you're telling us what happened. You're dealing with the core issue. They don't have tools to tell about the core issue. They can only say this is how people relate to him, so probably that's the core issue. It's a secondary chazaka versus a primary chazaka, just like the din of cheskes haguf overwhelms cheskes hadin, cheskes ha'av, which is the core issue. That's what God said. This is the man which can tell us. Reish Oini. That's me. Okay? That's it. So obviously we understand once you say it's yakel acher, which means to say it is basically, and if you've transformed from a subjective relationship into an objective data, that means you've made it. It would just be subjective data. So I know other chazakas are bigger than that. Your muzik is limited. Other chazakas are much bigger than that. Masha Enkin, if it's objective data, so you're the primary muzik. You're the cheskes haguf. And all the chazakas will naturally fall. That's why there's a simple flow here. Once we said Yakirenu la'achein, which reviewed the Carmelite, Nemar Adam Lemer, Afal Pisha Machzikin Lachem B'Chor. It's another budget. Because this is the only chazaka which deals with the nitty-gritty. Is he your son? Firstborn. You're the one that knows. Then he says, once you believe in the objective data, you're believed to say not just about the din, but about the story. So then obviously you're believed to say that he is your first child. So there's no difference between that and because of that he's your heir, or that and because of that he's a ben gusha ben chalutza. So kach nema lemer ben gusha ben chalutza la'achshen higashti chzatir v'yoldoli zeh o shenosi shegusha v'svarahu. I don't need a pasuk for this. It's very simple. Why? The midich siv yakim mali b'chor mali davar acher. He doesn't get bothered by the questions of Taisvis. He doesn't need drushes for this. Once he understands that Yakir means le'acherim, just like therefore it will overwhelm all other chazakas, because like a cheskes haguf, further a cheskes din is the core issue. So you're believed to make an objective knowledge of the core issue. So we know that you are the firstborn. Equals if that's the case. So we understand. Why you believe in this? Because you're a father? Because you're a moirish? No, you believe because you're the moilid. And once you're a moilid, you're believed to say how that koyach hayilada came into being. How the capability, how was your koyach hayilada realized? Well, it was realized in this child. It was realized vis-a-vis a grusha, and so on and so forth. Once we are describing that the moilid has their must to say on his hayilada, there's no difference. And that's the svara of Rabbi Yehuda is beautiful. The Rashbam is like poetry. It starts with saying Rabbi Yehuda, each word here leads into the next one. Don't you see how it works? He starts by saying Yakirein Lachirim, Rabbi Yehuda Amalei. He continues and he says, therefore, Mamela Usvarahu. One is because of the other. It's because Yakirein Lachirim that here are belief in mazik and objective data. And there's no machlekes of Rav and Ravasi. Why? Because without Yakir Lachem, we would have thought those two like Rav. There would be no difference between Bitin Asati and Yakir. The Yakir Lachem makes a difference. The Yakir Lachem takes it away from a Bitin Asati according to Rav and makes it like his Bitin Asati according to Ravasi. That's what's happening here. That's the Yakir Lachem and Rabban, which don't dash in Yakir Lachem very nicely. They see it very similar to Rav's is Bitin Asati. We don't know what happened. We know as far as Hilchos Yerusha is concerned that that's the din. It's limited. I never said we're creating objective data. We have subjective relationship. In what context? Context of a Moirish and a Yoirish. Minimizing the pasuk to much here, there's nothing more than that. It's only once you made it objective data, you took it out of the realm of the pasuk into something much more than just Yerusha. If you took away the Yakirin La'acherim, there'll be small issue about Yoirish and Moirish. What's the nafkamina? The nafkamina is very simple. If you're Neman because you're a Moilid, so you have to be muzik that you're the Moilid of this kid. Why would I believe you? It's only if you're the Moilid and he's the Yulud, I can decide how it happened. You have to be muzik as a father. But if it's only Yerusha, you only be muzik that you own the money. A big nafkamina. Do you have to be muzik as a father or be muzik as a Baal Mammon? L'chayra, according to Rabbanan, it's enough to be muzik Baal Mammon. According to Rebbe, and you don't have to be muzik as a father. Mashenkin, according to Rebbe, be muzik as a father. Big shout out to Rishonim. We're going to get there. See you tomorrow. Oh boy, you were late. Bye guys. Nice seeing you.